So anyway, I think there's just very interesting sort of genetic study to look at what's where and how long has it been there. So the grey leaf monkeys from the current genetics came to Borneo 3 million years ago. So they speciated to 2 species in Sabah. The red leaf monkeys came 1.5 million years ago. Okay. And they've only separated into subspecies because they have less time. What happened 1.5 million years ago when all these red leaf monkeys arrived? And how did the grey leaf monkeys feel about that? Don't know. What we do know is they're the same size, same social system, same diets, so they should all be competing. And it's not clear what pushes one out or the other. So that's 2 grey species and 2 red subspecies, all in the same Dipterocarp forest. They're not on the rivers particularly, not like the silver leaf. So I just kind of wanted to spend a bit of time saying Sabah is really special, and we tried to emphasize that a bit in the atlas with these unique species. So Bornean elephants, 95% of Sabah only. Kalimantan has almost none. Sarawak has absolutely none. Brunei has none. Okay, we've got the Sabah leaf monkey. We've got the subspecies of red leaf monkey. The black squirrel that we get in our gardens. Okay, that also stops at the Sabah border. I don't know why, but they do. And it's a subspecies, so there are other Prevost squirrels which have more grey and more white in them. But the jet black one is the Sabah one. So Fred Sheldon, who's done lots of ornithology and looked at these things, we have a similar thing with the shamas. So the white-rumped shama is found all over Borneo. But in Sabah, we have the white-crowned shama. Same color, except ours has a white crown, only in Sabah. So something's been going on that's isolated things in Sabah. During the ice ages, we know that it was cooler and drier, but that mountainous areas like Kinabalu and so forth, near the sea, which caught the precipitation, held on to forest species, while all around them it was savanna. So we've got, fossils of hyenas. Savanna was the dominant habitat in Borneo, except for these patches where it was wetter. And that's where these things were isolated. Then when it got warmer, forest spread again, and they bumped into each other, but they changed. They were now new species, having had the same ancestor. So that is, I think, what is going on with the leaf monkeys. Fred Sheldon's certainly shown that with various of the birds. But it means Sabah special because it has these remnant ancient populations which are different to the rest of Borneo. The timber boom I talked about, and I've sort of touched on as I've gone through that. Log forest, which is 80% of Sabah's area, forest area, is really valuable for conservation of wildlife. Few species don't do very well, and we're lucky in Sabah. Hunting is not bad. So as long as the habitat's there, most things are okay. After the timber came the oil palm boom, and really the white areas on the maps I've shown you are actually because those species aren't there. We need to do a better job of double checking that, but where studies have been made in palm oil, 80% of the forest species are missing. Elephants are having a good time. They love palms, young palms. They feed on grasses, palms, and bamboos. The problem is you then have human-elephant conflict, and here's some elephants coming into plantation, which they just cleared prior to replanting. because fire is not allowed, then the chinka chinka machine is used to chop up the palm stems. And the chinka chinka machine is like a dinner bell for the elephants. They can hear it miles, so down they come. And this photo was taken when 100 elephants arrived in a single plantation because they wanted to eat these palm stem bits. I think Sabah is very tolerant, and Sabahans don't like newspaper reports of dead elephants. They really don't. The society here doesn't like elephants being killed, doesn't like orangutans being killed, which fills me with hope that people will try and find solutions and not just say, "Oh, well, let's get rid of it." It's coming back and obviously being a guest in other people's country, it is remarkable sense of concern about wildlife for Sabah. So I'm optimistic about that. Even though, and also I think palm oil for Sabah has reached its peak area. There's a little bit more clearing, but I think generally speaking in America, that's enough. The deforestation for palm is not much in Sabah now compared to what it was in the mid-80s and mid-90s. So I'm optimistic there also. I think hunting, we have to be a bit careful. So obviously, poor old rhino went. The banteng, as I've said, I think is next at risk, 300 odd. People are aware of it. And I think the law enforcement and the plantation industry don't want people hunting. It's a generalization. I don't think they'll tolerate people going at night for pigs and so forth, and people may shoot the odd banteng, but basically, people don't want. I think the pangolin, so we're not just chatting about it before the talk. I don't know how they keep coming up with so many pangolins. I never see them. We see signs because they leave the claw marks when they go up to get to the ant nest during surveys. But thousands are captured, exported, caught in illegal stings to try and stop it all, and still they're there. And I don't know where they are. I never see them in the forest. I don't know where they are. But there must be a lot, because so many are being taken and still they're there. But it's a big risk. And I think we need to try and understand that. I mean, it's really interesting. Elisa sort of summarized the data really well in the chapter, but I just think we don't know. We just don't know how to find them properly and track them and put some radio satellite stuff to track them. Don't know what they need. Speak to the old farmers. They say, yeah, there are penguins everywhere. We used to just go and catch them in the farm. So they seem to be, as long as they can eat termites. So palm oil plantations should be pretty nutritious for them. There's lots of termites, but they're easily caught. So, and then this is obviously the rather gruesome Keningau market bear paws for sale, and a newspaper report also of someone trying to sell bear paws in the Tanjung Aru hotels to Chinese tourists in the car park. So that's, I think, Wong concluded that actually we do have sun bears widely over Sabah, but wherever you have a market, a focused market, and people can make some money off it, they can really whack these species, as the rhino has warned us. So I think that's my cautionary bit. And we've got climate change coming. Fire, not so much, at least not at the minute, but flood for sure. I don't have to mention it to anyone living in Phnom Penh. None of us are sure what's going to happen. It's coming. Climate change is happening. They've got records of distribution change of moths on Mount Kinabalu, and some birds have gone up, some birds have come down. So it's equivocal what will happen. I think all you can do in preparation for it is try and keep populations as healthy as possible where they are, and try and make sure they don't get fragmented into pockets. So part of WWF's job is to link forest patches with restoration corridors. That will allow species to migrate if they are in an area that is unsuitable for them, over time. We can never catch them all and move them. That's not an option. So we need to try and keep that connectivity open as a response to climate change. But other than that, I don't know what's going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of flooding in the east. That's about it. Sabah's a fantastic place. There you go, pretty pictures, so you can remember what a great state we all live in. Yeah, I mean, they taste great. They do taste great. There are some rather nauseating photos on Facebook of kind of macho standing with your head on the head of the dead banteng and got your rifle in your hand. So there's that kind of back of a truck, aren't I clever, hunter thing. So I'd say the meat, so if absence of pork because of bearded pig really hits certain traders, I think that risks ramping up that cause of banteng loss. I think people are sort of a bit more embarrassed, and the campaign's working a bit, but I don't have enough details. Yep. Yeah. So I think we're starting with the pasture enrichment. It could go to the next stage, and certainly John and Bora would say that should be immediate. Talking to Zainal, Dr. Zainal the vet, with Bora, it's difficult to move them. They get, I don't know what it's called anyway, shock, anaphylactic shock if you move them around. As adults, you need to move them as calves. So that limits your options of catching them and moving them. It is being looked at. It needs to be looked at with more urgency. I think having captive herds would be pretty easy to maintain once you've got the stock, but we haven't yet got stock. There is also a little bit of risk of hybridization with cattle, which are increasingly put in plantations, which would be a conservation issue. Yeah, captive breeding, pasture improvement, stock balancing. So I've only spoken to two, so I'm not a reliable source. Dogs, they have little kampong hunting dogs. They train them up, and that's how they go after them. In the two cases I've spoken, but there are lots of people who say, "Oh, I just found it." There's a guy got one on the back of his motorbike. Just crossing, So I can't tell you. They are an intriguing story, because going back to the 60s, they've been exported from Sabah in fairly substantial numbers. They don't strike me as fast breeders. These are saying it's just kind of one offspring at a time, maybe two. But how they manage to sustain a population when all these are being taken off, I don't know. Don't know. I don't know. It's not something not in the atlas. Everything's in here. Otherwise, I don't know. But it's really intriguing. I mean, there are records just in Annam, and they kind of bump into people's kaboons and they sort of bumble around a bit. How they then just disappear, you can't see them. You never see them on survey. Just hugely annoying. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're partial in their sampling. So yeah, so the conclusions yes, like I said at the beginning, but it's definitely worth saying again. But there have been enough studies just to look at what is the population in oil palm plantations, not spread over lots of them, but a few in Tinkayu and in the SAFE project program. And that doesn't change the picture. Those results don't change the picture, but actually they're not there over a large area. So you have leopard cats are widespread. The pangolin and island palms are there, widespread. The pigs are widespread. So they would be. So the pig map definitely understates how many are going into plantations. They don't seem to live there. They seem to go in from forest patches, even quite small ones, and then go back in the daytime. So we can list those, but it's a small percentage of the total number of species. Yes, yep. And so yeah, I mean, thank you. Absolutely, it's the database is there. We're putting in about 1,000 records a month, so it's live and it will continue. There's only 31 species. So as I said when we launched it, I'm looking forward to someone producing the next volume. It'll half kill them, but it's worth it for all the species that are on it. Lots and lots. Lots of carnivores. I haven't mentioned carnivores. You know, so we just keep bringing. I mean, there are fewer records, so it's harder to make a picture. But no, let's keep it going. That's why we're trying to get into the biodiversity center, and we have a staff post, which federal funding has been made available to transfer the data and keep adding. And they're in the middle of trying to produce an app for us all to have on our telephones. So if we have any photo of any wildlife, we can send it into the Wildlife Atlas database. So the data, I'm hoping, will be rolling. I don't want it to stop, like, you know, like that's the end of the book. This is actually the advertisement for the database, which is much bigger than this and keeps on rolling. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so for the elephants, we've got, I don't know how many, 30, 40 with satellite collars on, giving off data. Well, some continuously, depends how expensive it is, but it's certainly 3 or 4 times a day. And we have maps of those matriarchal groups. And they follow a fairly discrete pattern, as you'd expect, with occasional, especially bulls going on these sort of round tours. They're a bit like the orangutans, they don't go very far west. And they're in the southern, southeastern, south central part of Sabah.
That's GPS tracking. What about satellite imaging?
So the imaging, so you can't, so I think thermal imaging might get some, but actually it doesn't take much tree crown to just drop them out. You can't see them. The only thing that goes up is that GPS signal goes through the foliage. Very hard, and they're staying cool out of the sunlight, and safer non-human air and then coming in the night time, especially, unless they hear the chinka chinka. They come out in the daytime as well.
It would be interesting to overlay those maps with linear infrastructure.
Yes. Yep. I haven't even talked about it, but it is the problem of fragmentation, and will exacerbate climate change impacts by having fragments of forest stuck, disconnected to better areas, for sure. And for the larger plantain and so forth, will really disrupt their movements, their longer range movements. Orangutans also. So we're looking forward to lots of overpasses and underpasses for wildlife, which are standard in China. You know, India now has a whole manual for the whole country on wildlife underpasses and overpasses to allow that connectivity. Well, I mean, I think we should all be promoting, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think there's no way infrastructure is going to stop, but you can do it well or badly. And there's enough lessons from saluted elephants and so forth to say you don't have to do it like this. And the engineers say, excuse to those, apologies to those in the room, but the engineers say basically, if they know early enough, they can design it in at not a huge percentage increase. The problem is it comes up at EIA when they've done all their designing, and it'll cost a fortune to change it all. So it's trying to get ahead in the design, let the engineers, and they say, no one told us. They're vested interest. I think generally people aren't against it, but it's just not in the thinking. Needs to be, plugged in at lots of levels and a bit of campaigning. Yes. Yeah, yeah, but then implementation. Yeah, both. Yeah, yeah. 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 Yeah.
But it's just a matter of pushing it up because perhaps at that level they haven't thought this.
Yeah.
But once they accept it,
yeah,
I don't think.
Oh, sorry. So yeah. So there you go. There's a seminar for the Sabah Society.
Government.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and also from campaigning group like ourselves, it's the donors, the banks, the financing institutions, saying they won't release the funds unless they have these documents. So you've got to, better to have them both. Everything is in there. Everything is in there where we have it and where people wanted to share it. I have to say there has been a culture of defensiveness about one's data. Okay, so we spent a lot of time working on that and writing letters, promising WWF wouldn't walk off with other people's data. And I'd say probably a dozen people with a lot of data said, okay. And they are the bulk of the records. We've taken old museum specimen records in, and that can continue. And I showed all the photos of the people, but just to appreciate that people, particularly academics who are measured by their publications, were pretty generous to say, okay, here it is, under particular terms. And I'm very clear that these data are ours. 22,000 of WWF Malaysia's, the rest we are curating on behalf of. And if anyone wants them, then we'll tell them whose data they are. And they can go and ask directly. We're not a clearinghouse group. So that, yeah, I hope we can keep that culture of sharing the data, because it's kind of nonsense. I mean, in the end, the data never gets used. It just is, like 10% gets published. And some of the best records we had for the barking in the PJAN are actually from clouded leopard stuff, because it's byproduct. Yeah.
If only 10% gets published, why is the other 90% collected?
Well, okay, so you're searching for clouded leopards. You put out 100 camera traps. You get 20. Yeah, so that's all put out there, and you've got it on your clouded leopard research grant. But you photograph everything. So you'll have your 20 clouded leopards shots. Like it, yeah. So that's the one major source of it, and the other is when I did my PhD, I just gathered as much information I could because I only had a year and a half, 2 years, two years. Don't you start now, Bob? And how much of that did I really use? Probably 30, 40%. I mean, it was a different kind of data, but you know, you're often not sure what data you will need or what question you'll be able to answer. So you gather more. I think distribution data is less contentious in that sense. But if we wanted more information on population abundance, some of which I put in there, then people get jumpy. And yet that's what you need. You need to do the population job, not just what was the distribution. Okay, so yes, so hey, we're into citizen science here. A big buzz at the minute, and it's Suzika and Jane were here that are telling me off for not broadcasting it loudly. So this app is being produced by the Sabah Biodiversity Center. We're helping them with it, and they're testing it. We took it to the Borneo Bird Fair in Sepilok, got some birders to have a go. They all didn't like it. So good test, hard to use, didn't have the right whatever you need, you know, blah blah blah. So it's gone back in, and they have another. You know, I mean, to make a good app it's an ongoing process, but it's you really got to know what you're doing. It's not just we'll just sort of check a button. It's really difficult. So if that's the case, it's not going to work for general citizen science. The biggest risk is inaccurate information, you know, which just destroy a database because you don't know what's right and wrong, and then the whole thing's not usable. So we have been religious in throwing out any uncertain record, and the team still think I'm balmy. Everything I said, no, just get rid of it. Yeah, but we're not sure. Get rid of it. So you start citizen science sending stuff in. You need a quality filter. So it's not just the app. Well, if they send photos, okay, but hopefully no one takes a photo there and says they found it. All that is difficult. You know, unless you have very techy people checking. So all that needs to be sorted out. In the meantime, any records you do have, let Suzika Dwelling know in WFUK, just stick it in the database against your name. I know it's in. I think contacts in the. But I know. I just hope that you know we've left something that can be built, can be analyzed more thoroughly for different species, can inform environmental impact assessments, you know, and so forth. And that's what I hope. Yeah, and I also hope that the conservation science community that came together around this helps that voice as well.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, you can take it off.
Thank you.